Okay, so I want to share with you a few stories as to why Mussar is so important, and what the importance, what the special characteristics that caused, or actually the flaws that caused Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, the founder of the Mussar movement, to really get started with these teachings. So it was the high holidays, and as we can imagine, in many synagogues, it's overfilled. It's standing room only, and Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, his congregation was no different. He was an inspirational spiritual leader, and he needed more machzorim, more prayer books, so that people can follow along. And he didn't have enough for everyone, so he looked on with someone else. He gave away his to someone else, and he looked on with the person sitting next to him. And the other person eventually told him, would you stop hogging my sitter? would you just stop it, right? And then he realized that there's something about character that needs to be worked on. And that was really the impetus that Rabbi Yisrael felt, that it was really critical and important for there to be a study that people can get involved with, that can help them have full control of themselves. And to really, how many times are we in a situation where we are ready to get angry, and we say, you know what, I'm just going to hold it. I'm going to hold it together, right? That's a Mussar experience right there, right? And if, God forbid, we blow up instead of holding it in. And the idea is not holding it in and just, locking it inside us. The idea is not allowing ourselves to get to a point where we can be angry. That's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to get to a situation, in most cases, when we talk about any of the traits, and we gave out, I probably should make photocopies for everyone. So God willing, next week I'll have photocopies. If not next week, then the next time we meet, the beginning of November, I'll have it. But Rabbi Zelik Pliskin, in his book called Begin Again Now, has a list of, I believe, 360 negative traits and 270 positive traits. I mean, we're complicated constructs of humanity. We have many, many different types of traits, and these traits all have the ability to change our lives and the lives of the people around us. Right? It can bring people closer, or it can bring people apart, or separate people. And the better one's traits are, the more likable they are, the more pleasant it is for them to be around other people, for other people to be around them. So, anybody here like someone who gets angry? No, right? No, we don't like someone. It's not an attractive feature of a person to be angry, and yet we all know people who get angry, and it's not exactly what we like about them. We might like the other 90% of them, but that 10% when they're angry, it's ugly. We don't want to be there, right? How does a person remove that anger? Now, we all have deficiencies in our traits. As we mentioned previously, we all have positive traits, we all have negative traits. And we're all unique in the composition of those positive and negative traits, and how they play with one another is always uniquely different, because we have different backgrounds, we have different life experiences, we have different ways in which we respond to things. In certain places, when you give someone a thumbs up, it's like, thank you. In other places, that might not mean a thank you, right? So they might feel it's an insult. It's something, very basic things. Different cultures have different ways they understand things, and the way they express things. So we're going to talk a lot about this to understand the differences of human beings. Okay. Before we do that, I want to share a few more ideas. My grandfather, it was an incredible privilege that I had to sit and have dinner with him. I had dinner with him, not in a restaurant, in his house, and he would use only one hand to eat. Not because he couldn't use a second hand, he could use it, but he was in absolute perfect control of every thought, every movement of his life. Obviously, he wasn't born like that, but he, after working on himself, never got angry if he didn't need to. Never did anything, never was jealous. Never, you understand what it means to be in perfect control of your life. Also in your movements, where if he did not need to use a limb of his body, he didn't use it. How many times it's an amazing thing. My grandfather would walk home from shul. My grandfather was already in his late 80s, and he wouldn't hold on to the banister and the staircase because he didn't need to. Right? Now, most of us, we don't even think about it. It's like, it doesn't make a difference, right? It makes a difference. It makes a huge difference. I'll tell you why. Because we are in a culture that it's okay to ask people for favors. It's okay to not be self-sufficient. Right? I can say, can you pass that over here? Can you pass that? It's a normal thing in our culture. Pass the salt, right? Pass the soda, right? Whatever we need, we can. It's a common thing. But if we go back a little bit in history to the creation of Adam and Eve, the creation of heaven and earth, it says that God created the world. He uses two different terminologies of God's name. God has many different names. And uses two different terminologies. One terminology is a terminology of judgment, of responsibility, and one is the terminology of kindness. And the commentaries all ask, why is there a change of that terminology? God, it says, He created Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim, Elokim et hashamayim v'ta'aretz. Bereshit bara Elokim, what's Elokim? That's the terminology of judgment. And then a little bit further down it says, and God, which is Hashem, right? Whatever it goes, however the verse continues. So it starts with Elokim and changes over to a different terminology, different name of Hashem. So our sages ask this: why the change? So commentaries explain because God really wanted the world to be controlled by judgment, meaning absolute responsibility, accountability. But God recognized that the world can't survive by absolute accountability, so God blended in kindness. Now, what's the difference between accountability and kindness? Accountability is you get what you get. You get what you deserve. What's kindness? Well, you don't deserve it, but we'll give it to you anyway. That's what kindness is. So, if you have a world, I'll give you an example. Someone steals. What should be the punishment? Chop off their hand, right? That way they don't steal anymore. Right? Well, that's absolute judgment. What's kindness? Well, it was your first offense. So we'll let you go, but be careful. Right? It's a warning. Right? You pay it back, but you're not going to be... Second offense, right? Now we're going to deal with it more harshly. But still, we, especially in the United States, we deal with a tremendous hand of kindness. Tremendous kindness. In fact, many of our sages, our modern day sages, call America the government of kindness. Look how much kindness we do all around us. Right? Someone doesn't have a job, we'll help them. We'll give them medicine. We'll give them transportation. We'll give them food. We'll give them all of the necessities. Even the luxuries, not only the necessities, we'll give them the luxuries. We'll give them air-conditioned buses, right? And we'll give them more than just the basics of bread and water, right? They can buy meat and they can buy candies and they can. It really is. Now, whether or not it's right or wrong, that you can have in political science, a different room over here. I'm sure someone will discuss whether or not God is a Democrat or a Republican, right? That we can have in a different time. But that's not the discussion. But that's the difference between judgment. Judgment is you get what you get a job, and we're not going to give you a free handout. Now, if someone's destitute, is poor, there's a mitzvah in the Torah. We give him charity. Right? There's a mitzvah to help those who are less fortunate. There's no question. It's an obligation of the Torah to support someone like that. But there's a big difference between just doing an act of kindness and being total kindness, where we turn a blind eye. You don't have to ever find a job. You don't have to ever, take responsibility for yourself. So, going back to that story, there is a certain quality in those who are closer to perfection, in that there is absolute accountability, that they obligate themselves. They obligate themselves to absolute responsibility. Right? Is this clear? The idea is clear? Right? And that's the reason my grandfather didn't hold a banister. He doesn't need to. Right? I'm going to be self-sufficient. I'm not going to rely on anybody else's assistance, not even the banister. Now, that's just an interesting side note. But not only that, my grandfather wouldn't help me. I'd come Friday afternoon before Shabbos. My grandfather would be extending the table. My grandfather's in his late 80s, and he'd be stretching the table by himself. And I'd say, Saba, let me help you. And he's like, no. This is I got it, right? This is don't have mercy on me. And don't make it easier for me, right? Let me do my work. Let me do it right. Now, okay, there's another aspect of it, of letting other people do acts of kindness for you. That's okay. That's at a later stage. We can talk about that. But the overall idea. So now, having absolute control. Imagine you eating your entire meal. You don't move your hand one time. You're only using, if you're a righty, you use your right hand to eat because you don't need to. Right? Absolute control. Imagine, would such a person get angry because someone says something that's offensive to them? Right? They're in full control. So the idea of having full control, I'll give you another example. My grandfather, before we went to yeshiva, at the end of a break, a summer break or a Pesach break, so he would always tell us 5 times a day, try to overcome your impulse, your instinct. How many times are we sitting by our desk and we're like, okay, let me just go get some coffee? Right? Okay. We're not saying not to get coffee. Wait 1 minute and then go get the coffee. Today it's even easier. We're on our phones, right? We want to just check our messages. We want to check Facebook. We want to check our WhatsApp status or whatever. Whatever it is. You know what? I'm just going to wait a minute. I'll put my phone back down. I'll wait 1 minute. You know why? Just because I'm in control. That's why. Okay, so what's the game, Rabbi? It's very simple, because the more we're able to get control over non-vital, non-important, non-essential areas of our lives, the more we'll be able to have control when something unexpected comes up. Because we're learning that we respond when we need to respond. We respond when it's called upon us to. Okay, so I'll give you another example. There was a great student of Kelm, right, where they trained their students in the yeshiva of Kelm to in the ways of Mussar, but in a very, very strong way. And there was a student who was waiting at a train stop, and he turned his head to see when the train is coming. And then he turned back and he says, "Oy, if I was still in Kelm, they would give it to me over the head for this." Why? Is it going to change anything if you look over there? Nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to change. So why are you looking? Right? If someone walks into a room, everyone turns their head. The person behind us says Kaddish, right? We turn around. What? You know exactly who it is. But when our mind is not occupied and we're just impulsive, so our reactions when we get angry, when we're jealous, when someone says something to us, is also impulsive. But the more we're able to gain control of our reactions, the more we'll be in control when things that are unexpected come our way. So when someone says something and you want to just bite back at them or bark back at them, you know what? I'm in control. You know why? Because it started with my water when I was sitting by my desk. It continued that I'm not going to, you know what? I don't need to look at my phone now. I can look at it in 10 minutes. You know what? I started doing this. And by the way, many CEOs today stopped having smartphones. I actually bought 2 smartphones in the last month, and they both didn't work. I was like, what's the message from God? Right? Both of them didn't work right. Brand new ones out of the box. They both didn't work. So I'll get to it. But I went to the store and they didn't have it in stock. And I went to, it's like I keep on having a, God really, you know why? I was thinking to myself, you see, it must be such a life-changing experience that the Yetzer Hara really doesn't want me to do it. Because this is such an easy distraction. He has it so easy on us. It's one ping away of derailing us. It's one ping away, right? And we're totally in a different world. It really is an amazing thing that this little device has more technology in it than the space shuttle did in 1969 that went to the moon. This little device has more technology in it. We can look from here. We can see in China. We can see anywhere in the world, right? Most of these things are waterproof and dustproof and have unbelievable abilities. Unbelievable abilities. It's funny because I use my computer significantly less because of this device. I can just respond right here. I can, look at spreadsheets. I can, draft emails. It's unbelievable. We'll talk about that another time. We'll talk about how to not be controlled. We mentioned this previously. I think it was in the last class, how not to be controlled by our materialism. That we should be in control of it, not it in control of us. We can get to it another time. We'll discuss it more. But my grandfather, the following story I heard from one of my grandfather's students. My grandfather was teaching a class for his most prominent students. And I'm talking about, my grandfather passed away, he was 92 years old. And he had several thousand students, all of whom, or most of whom, have become mega educators. I'm talking about educators of schools, educators of rabbis, of synagogues, like mega educators, authors. If most books that talk about Jewish education today quote my grandfather as being he was a really special man. In any event, he gave a special weekly class to his most prominent students. One of the students, the one I heard the story from, was late. He got stuck in traffic, and he was on a bus, right? So he's like, things happen, and he took the extra time to be there on time, and whatever happened, he got there late, and he's running off the bus, and he's dashing into the building of where the class is being held, pushes the door open, and the door slams right into my grandfather. I mean, like, he said, he's a big guy. He said, I'm telling you, it was like a body slam. And my grandfather, he said, didn't flinch. Didn't even look who it was. Didn't look who it was. Full 100% control of every single aspect. His response, this student told me, he learned more from that experience than all of his lectures. This is a person who's in total control. That there isn't anything that phases you. There's nothing that throws you off guard. There's nothing that you're not ready for. I remember I had a rabbi who told me, anybody here spend time in Israel? Anybody here negotiate with a cab driver in Israel? Right? It for an American, it absolutely makes you crazy. Like literally crazy. Okay? Because they'll tell you 20 shekel, and when you get there, they'll say 50 shekel. And they'll say, there was traffic. And you're like, excuse me, you told me 20 shekel. I'm like, no, it's 50 shekel. And you got and people become irate. And people get livid. Right? You told me 20, not no. This is a 50. I could have put on the meter in it. And people go crazy. Now, if you think about it, for an American, an extra 10, 20, 30 shekels, like what? It's $6. It's like, it's not a big deal. It's not going to put us under. But it's the principle. It's like, you lied to me, you cheated me, you right. But is it worth getting angry for $6? So my rabbi would always say, he says, before you get into a cab, prepare yourself. How much are you willing to pay not to get angry? right? And that's the worthwhile price to pay. And then it comes out to be 40 instead of 50. You know, and I saved 10 shekel. It's a whole different perspective, right? But you have to be prepared. He said the problem and the reason why people become so irritated is because they don't prepare themselves for what could happen. How many times in a relationship does someone say something for the 1,000th time and it irritates you again for the 1,000th time? You know what that means? That means we're not preparing ourselves for that same response to not irritate us. Right? It can happen with our children. It can happen with our spouse. It can happen with our parents. And it can even happen with ourselves. Right? One of the great tools that our Mussar masters teach us is to have a daily evaluation of our experiences. So imagine this, right? You wake up this morning, whether you have children at home, whether you have parents staying at your home, whether you have a spouse at home, right? All the interactions that happened. Was it good morning, sweetheart? Or was it, good morning, thank you for waking me up. I really appreciate it. Thank you. You couldn't let me sleep for another hour? Right? There are different ways that you can wake up. Okay, so imagine the end of your day, you take an accounting of your entire day. Your entire experience. And you say, you know something? I could have been kinder in the morning. I could have been nicer. I could have been friendlier. I could have let that car go in front of me. You know, when I was at Starbucks, I didn't have to be such an idiot to the person online. I could have been nicer. I didn't have to cut the line, make believe like I don't really realize that there's a line there. You know, it's like, you know those people? They're like they start schmoozing with someone on the line so that they can just like sneak in, right? Maybe I shouldn't have done that. So this evaluation, what happens is that it gives you an opportunity so that the next time it happens, you can change the course of action. You prepare yourself because going through that mental exercise will give you the tools you need so that next time that experience happens, you can react differently. And it's amazing because I used to be a very, very extremely aggressive driver. I used to be a really aggressive driver. And then in the process of teaching these classes, I realized it probably wasn't a good thing. It probably wasn't one of the better character traits to have. So I started forcing myself to drive with different patterns of driving. First it started, I had to stay to a certain speed. Then I forced myself to drive on the right lane. And there's nothing more irritating for a New York driver to drive on the right lane, okay? Especially in Houston. There's nothing, especially, you know, when they have those New York lanes, I call them, when it becomes 3 and then goes back to 2. I call it, that's all for all the New Yorkers to pile up in that lane and then cut in front, right? That's the New York lane. And I stayed on the right lane. It's an amazing thing because my father was here. I think I mentioned this. My father was here a few weeks ago. And, you know, I was regular, ordinary driving. There was a car trying to pull in. I stopped, let the car in. My father, looked at me. He's like, I would never let someone go in front of me. He's like, and I realized a little bit where my driving habits came from. But either way, we can really change those things if we just stop for a second and evaluate what we're doing. But the problem we have today is that we are so incredibly busy. We're busy with everything. If we don't have our radios on in our car or our satellite radios on in our car, we have our phones ringing, we have our messages dinging, and we get into the house and we have the television on or the radio on, and we have this on and that on. It is so distracting. We don't have a say. And then if we're not doing all that, we have our tablets and we have our computers and we have, we don't have a second to just stop and just think. And part of what we need to do really to succeed with this Mussar process is to even find 5 minutes a day or a night. 5 minutes, just 5. Let's say it's 10 o'clock to 10:05 at night or whatever your bedtime is, before you go to sleep, before you're going to go brush your teeth, when you're not doing anything else, you turn everything down. And now just start thinking about your day. You know what? When I was at Costco pushing my cart, I could have been nicer to someone, let them, please go right ahead, right? I could have, I've had this numerous times since, but, I get those 40 bottles of water, right? And then you just put them in your cart and go. And I stopped doing that. I started looking around, and I see these people, some of who are of age, and like they can hardly move it. I was like, I became, there was a time, the max I had was 5 different carts that I was loading up with water, right, helping people out. And it was for me, what is the big deal? It's not a big deal, but it's to stop and say, something? I want to be kind. I want to help people out. I don't want to be that guy who's always rushing and doesn't have time for anyone and doesn't even pay attention, doesn't notice. You know what? I'll look around. Maybe someone else needs some help here. Right? It takes literally 30 seconds. Everyone has an extra 30 seconds. Right? But the idea here is that the goal of Mussar is, number one, to have control of yourself, of your own actions, reactions, impulses. But the second thing is to go beyond yourself. To not be fully self-absorbed. And the culture we're in today is a self-absorbed culture. We are living in a world that all people think about is themselves. And you think about it from the way our teenagers, and I have several of them in my own house, right? How they take their own selfies, right? Like this, all the what's their angle and what's their, right? Right? And it's all about wanting to present themselves. Everything's about the me. It's the iPhone, the iLife, the iPhoto, the iPhone, right? The iPad. It's not coincidence that that's the culture we're living in. It's the I. It's the focused on the I. And it's a problem because it's not affording us, it's not giving us the opportunity sometimes to think beyond ourselves. It's not only about the I. And this process of Mussar really is key to helping us get there. It really is key. Any questions so far? Any questions? No questions. All right. So I want to share with you an interesting idea. I think I may have mentioned this. I'm looking at my notes here. You'll cut here, right? Yeah, please. Oh, we mentioned this, so I'm just going to quickly go over this again, because there are some new faces here. So I'm just going to quickly, Jacob, when he gave his tribes, his children, the blessings, so 2 of the children seemingly don't get a blessing. They get lambasted by their father, right? He is Kleichamas mechorosehem. You guys you use arms to fight, and he's referring to the story with Dinah when she was abducted by Shechem, right? And they raped her, and they said they came back to the children of Jacob, and they said, why don't we just become family? We'll do whatever you want to do. Our boys can marry your girls, your boys can marry our girls, and kumbaya, and everything will just be great. And Simeon and Levi, they say, great, that's a deal, but we're Jews, you have to circumcise. And they tell them that all the men in Shechem should circumcise. They say no problem. On the 3rd day, when it's the most painful and it's the most limiting day, they go and they destroy the entire city. They kill everyone. And Jacob doesn't like that. Jacob doesn't like it at all, and Jacob really beats them up on it. Now, we can get into the whole justification of why they did it, why they did it in that way, and why Jacob was upset about them. If you notice the words in the verse, Jacob did not reprimand them for killing them. Jacob reprimanded them for using trickery. Jacob was a man of honesty, of truth, and the trickery is what bothered him, because that's not truthful. And that was his problem. You see, you want to kill him? Kill him. Right? They defiled your sister, fine. You want to take revenge, you can do that. But don't use trickery. That's not a tool that we use as Jews. And that's what he beats them up on. But either way, you wonder, he's giving blessings to all of the brothers, and to these 2 brothers, he just pounds them. Where's the blessing in that? So my grandfather brings sources from the from the sages that the greatest blessing you can give someone is point out their flaws. And this is brought down by King Solomon time and again in Proverbs, where a wise person will thank a person who criticizes them, even if it's not done lovingly, even if it's not done with the right intentions, because to bring you a perspective about yourself, to find a blind spot that you don't notice is a gift that is very precious. That's not always pleasant. No one likes to think about themselves that they're deficient in any specific area. You know you have a really bad temper. Me? How dare you say that, right? You know, the temper goes again, right? You see, that's exactly what I'm talking about, right? No, I'm not angry. So we have ways to justify to ourselves, but when someone really cares about us and loves us, then, and even if they don't love us so much, but it says that a wise person will accept from everyone criticism. Why? Because it's free self-help. You want to know what you need to fix? Ask someone else. Now, we're not here to beat ourselves up. And the point of Mussar is not to recognize how much flaws we have and how much negative traits we have, but on the contrary, it's just the opposite, where we are trying to point out the positive traits that we have, how great we are. And many times it's very difficult for us to really acknowledge, because we it's a little arrogant for me to notice that, about myself, that I'm good in any specific area, right? It's not exactly the most humble. No, it's not. We asked my grandfather, would it be arrogance if we, when we do this evaluation of ourselves, to identify, I'm actually good at this trait. He said, "You kidding? Arrogant? You're obligated. You're obligated. You must know what your qualities are. You must know what your virtues are, and be able to identify them. This is one of my qualities. I just want to bring it to perfection." You don't have to go announce it. Probably not a good idea to announce it, but to know it for yourself and to have it on a sheet, just like I do. I have a chart of my character traits. I'll show it to you just very briefly, because I don't want you to see it. But this is the top ones are my positive traits. The bottom are my negative traits. Now, the purpose of it is for me to look at it and say, you know what? If God gave me these positive traits, let me use them and perfect them. And if God gave me negative traits, let me identify them and not be blind to them. Right? If you know someone has a bad left turn when they drive, shouldn't you point that out to them so that they should be more careful when they make that left turn? Right? It would be important. So that, having a negative trait, a person who's lazy, a person who's very judgmental of other people, right? Whatever it is, you pick someone who has anger, someone who's arrogant, any of these negative traits. If a person doesn't know that they're there, right? It's like someone walking around with an infectious disease and doesn't know it, right? It spreads, and it gets worse. You have to treat it. And that's what we're trying to do through the process of Mussar. But the first step is knowing our qualities. And I gave out the Mita worksheet, the Get to Know Yourself worksheet. If anyone does not have it, you can email me at awolbe at torchweb.org, and I'll happily send it to you in a PDF. I have it all ready to go, so just let me know, and I'll send it to you. But identifying our true traits is what we're trying to, our true self is what we're trying to accomplish. I mentioned a different story about Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter once woke up in the middle of the night, and he really needed a cigarette. And the only place to get a cigarette was a shop that was open on the other side of town, and you have to walk across town to get that cigarette. So he was in a big dilemma. If he walks all across town in the middle of the night to get a cigarette, so he's just an indulgent, person immersed in his desires. He can't control his urges, It's not a positive trait. But if he doesn't go now, then he's just lazy. Right? So what does he do? He's stuck in a dilemma. So you know what he did? Being a Mussar master that he was, he walked across town, didn't buy it, and went back. Right? Full control. Got it? That's someone who knows himself. Right? I can guarantee you that he was plagued with both of those traits. Being someone who indulged in his urges, had to control that, and that would be lazy. Right? He would also be lazy. So he had to fight both of them. So to fight them, he went across town. How many? It's just like, think about that for a second, okay? Imagine the new iPhone you've been waiting for forever came out. And today's the day. And you say, you know what? I'm going to go to the store, and I'm not going to buy it. I'm going to wait a day. I'm going to wait a week. Right? That's a person who's able to control themselves. Now imagine such a person has an opportunity to get angry, legitimate anger. They'll be able to control it, hopefully, right? Hopefully, because they're training. What you're doing is you're training your muscle that you use it when you need it. You're training that muscle, right? And if you don't strengthen that muscle, if you don't practice exercising that muscle, then it's just like it doesn't. You don't have full control over it. I've had this numerous times, particularly because I love technology. I really do like technology. And when my new phone came in the mail, I was so excited. I really was excited. And my son was even more excited. He was so excited. And he saw the box sitting on my desk. And he says, "What's this?" I said, "This is my phone came." He says, "Can I open it?" I said, "I'm not touching it." This is before Pesach. I said, "I'm not touching it till after Pesach. I'm not touching it till after Pesach." That was it was like 8-10 days. Right? I'm not touching it till after Pesach. He's like, "That's crazy. Why would you do that?" I'm like, "Because I'm in control. Just because." And I said, "If you want, you can touch it. I'm not touching it. I'm not, And of course, he left it. He left it there. But it was for me just you know what? At first we think it's like, I gotta have this, right? You know what? I'm in control. Just to bring yourself to the realization that I'm not addicted to it. I'm not attached to it. I can live without it. Everything will be fine if I wait just another 10 days. So that's I try to do that with a lot of things when something exciting that I'm anticipating. So I'll try to just hold off. Just hold off a day or two or a week or more. And suddenly it's not that exciting at the end of the day. It's like we get excited about things either because of the hype of of the media, of how it's sold, how it's packaged, and we clothes, right? We go shopping, we see something, you ask a friend, "Oh, where'd you get this?" "Oh, I got this here, I got this there. I gotta get this. I gotta get those shoes. I gotta wear those shoes." It's okay. You can relax. Take it easy. Nothing's gonna happen. I'm in control. I'm in control. Again, I have to repeat this again. The purpose of being in control is so that when the unexpected arises, you have control over your reaction. So when there's shocking news, you're like, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God," yeah, all chaos. No, it's okay. You're contained. You don't react out of just emotion. You react in full control. And that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to accomplish. One of the great Mussar masters of the previous generation was Rabbi Shmulevitz. Chaim Shmulevitz was the head of the Mir Yeshiva in Jerusalem. But he was originally a student of Rabbi Yerucham Levovitz, my grandfather's teacher, in Poland, in Mir, in the Mir in Poland. And he once went swimming with his Rebbe, Rabbi Yerucham. He said he learned more by how he swam than from all of his lectures. Just the self-control, the modesty, the way in which he acted, he said he learned more from that experience than all of the lectures that he experienced. Right? There's something to seeing someone who's in full control. I want to share with you in Pirkei Avot, Ethics of Our Fathers, chapter 4, Mishnah 5, the following Mishnah. It says, Rabbi Shmuel says, one who studies Torah in order to teach is given the means to study and to teach. The one who studies in order to practice is given the means to study, teach, observe, and practice. The commentary says as follows. Rabbeinu Yonah says, this means to say that when one learns for the purpose of seeking the truth, then his desire becomes to toil for even years upon years to acquire one small deed or trait according to its truth. Such is the way of a person who learns for the sake of doing. Okay, so let's understand. Then his desire becomes to toil for even years upon years to acquire even one small trait. Okay? Imagine this. Imagine that we can study one trait. You know, my great grandfather, my grandmother's father, was also a Mussar master. And he worked on a single trait for 2 years. We mentioned this. To greet every person in every situation with a smile. Right? Imagine every situation to greet every person with a smile. I mean, there's no grumpy day. There's no sad day. There's no angry day. There's every single interaction you have with another person to greet them with a countenance, with a smile, with a delightful joy. Right. It could be. Sometimes you're like, are they really here? Right. No, but genuinely. Now, I'll give you a little bit of understanding. He worked on this for 2 years. 2 years he worked on this single one trait, to master this trait. That means I can bet for the first few months he was challenged. And by the way, if you are to take, and when you will do this, hopefully in the coming years, through the study of Mussar, we'll start talking about a trait, and suddenly you'll see this trait pops up all over. Do you ever see like a certain character, a certain name that you hear about, and suddenly you see everything is about, you see that popping up? You'll have that, if it's the trait of happiness. Suddenly you'll start seeing all of these challenges to being happy all the time. And how happiness is not, you'll see that suddenly it becomes a struggle now. And that's great. It's a good thing. It means you're in the game now. Now you're in the in spring training, right? And then becomes the season, and you'll have pitch after pitch to hit when it comes to the challenge of happiness. And then you'll have the postseason. It gets more difficult, and then you have a 7-0 shutout, right? In the postseason game, really, against the Yankees, we have to lose like that. But either way, right? But that's the challenge of life. The challenge of life is that we're going to be faced with a goal that we want to accomplish, and the Yetzer Hara will throw us that perfect curveball. We're not going to be ready for it, and suddenly we'll be like, you know what? He's pretty clever. He's got me good on this, right? And take it as a challenge. Don't give up. That's the challenge of life. That's the real living. It's like the red pill, the blue pill. Everyone familiar with the Matrix, right? You're not familiar? So basically, the prophet is telling him, you can either take the blue pill, you can take the red pill. One, you live in oblivion, you'll never have to worry about anything again. Right? You'll just live like the rest of the world lives. Or, I'll show you the challenges of life. I'll show you how to overcome them. I'll show you how to become a better person. Right? That's the very gist of it. And we all have that choice. We can just say, you know what, I'm never going to come to a Mussar class again, and nothing will ever bother me again either, right? I'll be angry, who cares, right? Who cares, right? I'll just move on with life. Or I can say, you know what, I want to elevate myself and become a better person. Become an improved person where I'm elevated. The idea is not elevated above others, but as a person, I'm more of a human. I'm connecting more with my traits. My character is more enhanced through these challenges. We all will be thrown curveballs. And I can guarantee you, we know of the Chafetz Chaim. The Chafetz Chaim passed away in 1934. He brought to our attention Lashon Hara. Slander, not to speak negatively about other people. No, not to speak. He has 2 books on it at least, and those books are the Bible of everything you need to know about not speaking negatively about other people. It's unbelievable. I'll just tell you as a side note, the Chafetz Chaim, in his book, initially wrote that you can say Lashon Hara about yourself. About yourself, to keep yourself humble, you can say something negative about yourself. And later on, he changed it. The following story happened. He was once traveling, and he was an older man, and he would travel from city to city selling his books. And that's how he got his livelihood. And of course, he was known as the Chafetz Chaim, was like a legend. And so one time he was on a train, and there was an individual on the train who didn't know who he was. The person, of course, heard of the Chafetz Chaim. It's like he heard of was the greatest Jewish scholar of that generation. Of course, he heard of him, but he was such a simple man. He was traveling on the train alone, and he's in this how do you call it? Those little the rooms. The compartment. Thank you. Travel agent. Anybody needs a travel agent right here. So he was in his compartment with this other Jewish individual, and he opens up the window, and the man slams it shut. He says, "Don't you know it's cold? What's wrong with you?" In any event, so eventually the guy, he tries to calm the individual down. They get into this conversation. He says, "Where are you heading to?" He says, "I'm heading to this and this town." So the man says to the Chafetz Chaim, he says, "Oh, the Chafetz Chaim is coming." He didn't know he's talking to the Chafetz Chaim. So the Chafetz Chaim says, Chafetz Chaim, come on. Who's the Chafetz Chaim already? Right? So the man stands up and gives the man a slap, saying, "How dare you talk like that about the Chafetz Chaim?" Right? How dare you? He had no idea that he was actually talking to the Chafetz Chaim. They get to their final the next stop is this in this town, and the man gets up and he goes out one door, and the Chafetz Chaim gets up and goes out the other door, and the man, as he walks out of the train, he notices there's a huge group of people there waiting, and he says, "What's going on? Why is everyone here? Why is everyone here at the train?" They said, "What are you talking about? The Chafetz Chaim is just arriving." He's like, and you can imagine, he realizes what he did. It's like, what did I do? Right? And the next day, the Chafetz Chaim gets word that there's an individual who's completely broken. He's like beside himself, and he can't even come to see the Chafetz Chaim. And it was the individual that was on the train with him. So the Chafetz Chaim sent a message to him, "Please tell him I must meet with him. I must meet with him." So the individual comes and he's wailing and he's crying. He's like, this guy, you imagine what he did. It's like, and Chafetz Chaim says to him, No. He says, "What are you crying?" He stands up for him. Chafetz Chaim stands up for him and he says, Thank you. You taught me that I was wrong in what I wrote, that you're allowed to say Lashon Hara about yourself. He says, Thank you. What can I pay you for teaching me?" Obviously, the Chafetz Chaim was trying to comfort the individual, right? But in so doing, also really conveying this important message that this person was really teaching him something very, very important. And it's a so either way, about the Chafetz Chaim. What was I going to say about the Chafetz Chaim? I don't remember. Either way, it's a great story. So, it was a great story, right? So I want to share with you. One other, an amazing story I heard on Yom Kippur from Rabbi Moskowitz, the rabbi of Maryland Minyan. A phenomenal story. So, the old Bubba Rabbi, right? Bubba is one of the Hasidic, one of the probably over 1,000 Hasidic dynasties. Now you have to understand, just do a little bit of history here. Every little shtetl, every little town in Europe, right, had a spiritual leader, and many of whom the only way for them to get all of their congregants, all the people, all the Jewish people in their village, to get inspired, is they used Hasidic style teachings to really inspire them, and they became the Rebbes, right? And you have many, many different Rebbes. I can list off right here 50 different Hasidic dynasties. Now we know of a few. We've heard probably through news or current events or seeing things in the Jewish community, we've heard of different Hasidic dynasties. But there are thousands. It's unbelievable how many different Hasidic dynasties. Either way, Wolbe is one of the big ones. You're talking about tens of thousands of Hasidic followers. So when right after the Holocaust, many of those dynasties were obliterated. The Wolbe Rebbe came to New York, and he didn't even have a minion of his own followers. And he lost his wife was murdered, his children, except for one son, Reb Naftolke. And his son was, who later on became the Wolbe Rebbe as well, after his father passed away. But it was Friday evening, and they needed a minion. They had 9 men, and they needed one more person for the minion. So the Rebbe tells his son, Naftolke, go outside and find another Jew. So he goes outside, and he's asking, he sees someone, he looks like a Jew. He says, so you're a Jew? He says, yeah. He says, can you join us for a minyan? He says, I'm done with minyan. I'm done. And obviously he experienced the Holocaust. He was upset at what he experienced, and he was like, didn't want to hear of minyan. He's begging him, please, we need you're our 10th man. He says, fine, one condition. That I'm the chazan. I'm going in there, and I'm the chazan. I lead the services. I said, sure. Comes inside. He tells his father. The father says, no problem. Bring him. He's the 10th man. He'll be the chazan. Great. Leads the services. After services, they thank him. What's your name? Chaim. Chaim the chazan. Great. He leaves. The next week, he shows up again. Goes straight for the podium and starts leading the services. And this starts happening several weeks. It's happening. Then 1 week, he doesn't show up. Doesn't show up anymore. So the Rebbe tells his son, he says, go out and find him. He's there. Go out and find him. He's looking all around, and he sees in a park, one of the local parks, he sees this Chaim the Chazan is smoking a cigarette, something which is obviously prohibited on Shabbat. He's smoking a cigarette. So he goes to his father. He says, I saw him in the park, and he's smoking a cigarette. I can't. He says, that's not him. That's not him. Okay, someone else came, they had a minion, and they haven't seen Chaim the Chazan. 30 years later, there was a major celebration in the Wolbe dynasty, and now they have tens of thousands of Hasidim. They have a monster building in Brooklyn and Borough Park, right? They're no longer on the Upper West Side where they were originally. And at this festivity, people coming up to the Rebbe and saying Shalom Aleichem and giving him a hand and so on and so forth. One person walks over. He looks just like the other followers. He has the big shtreimel. He has the long coat. He has the long beard, the payas, the whole thing, just like the rest of the Hasidic people. And he comes over to the Rebbe. He says, Mazel Tov, do you remember me? And the Rebbe looks at him. He says, Chaim the Chazan? He says, that's right. So the Rebbe pulls his son. He says, Naftolke, what did I tell you? Did I tell you it wasn't him? He says, yeah. He says, do you know who was smoking? It was the Germans who were smoking. It was the Hitler that was smoking. Many times we can see people doing things that we seem to think, how can you do such a terrible thing? You know what? What the Wolbe Rebbe taught us, no human being wants to do bad things. It's an experience. It's something that happened to them that's causing them to do the bad thing that they're doing, the bad action that they're doing. That is not them. Many times we could be easy to judging someone They get angry. They're impatient. They are jealous. It's not them. We have to learn to judge every single person we meet favorably, using our positive traits, using our abilities that are given to us to not cast judgment on other people. People do things that could seem terrible. Do we know what their circumstances are? Do we know what their background is? Even if we know them because they grew up in our same home, do we know everything? There's a whole life that we may not know about. And it's such an important perspective to have. So Mussar, just as a summary of the introduction, next week we'll already start with traits. And we'll take a survey after we turn off the recording. We'll take a survey what traits everyone wants to start focusing on. I like to deal with the positive traits if that's possible. So hopefully we'll start with that, but we'll get to that in a second. Mussar gives the ability to correct our traits. Mussar helps affect change on those traits and helps refine our character, and in return makes us a person of change. What we're trying to become is a different person. I'm a changed person. I'm not the same person anymore. That's really what we're trying to establish here. You may have known me as this Aryeh Wolbe, but I'm now hopefully a different Aryeh Wolbe because I've worked on myself to change, to improve myself. Oh, that's the person who's so stingy. I know them. No, they're a different person. That's the person who's so impatient. No. I'm working on myself to change. That's what we're trying to accomplish. In the broader picture, every interaction we have influences us in one way or another. Every interaction we have influences us. Mussar helps us understand the challenges that come our way so we can channel them to affect positive change. Right? The idea here is, everything we see, the Baal Shem Tov teaches us, the master of the Hasidic movement, the founder of the Hasidic movement, he says everything you see is a mirror. Everything you see you're in Walmart and you see someone yelling at their child. Guess what? It's a mirror. That's the way you look. There is an opportunity for you to learn about yourself. You see someone doing something, you're like, how could they do such a thing? Right? Guess what? You're looking at a mirror of yourself. It's a wake-up call. It should be a wake-up call. All right? I'll give you another example, another thing which is a little frightening. How many times do we open up the radio or the television in the morning, the news, and we see overnight there was a murder, there was another assault, there was some other story that happened in the news, and you think that, like, 1 second, we just learned in the Mussar class that everything is a mirror. Well, what's going on? I didn't kill anyone. I didn't assault anyone. Why am I seeing this? Well, perhaps today human value has been diminished. It's expressed in many different ways. But maybe we don't value people properly. Maybe I'm willing to embarrass someone if it's to protect my own dignity. Maybe someone else's value isn't enough to me. There's a lot we can identify if we start thinking about ourselves. Maybe that's the reason we're seeing these things. I'm not suggesting anything, but perhaps it's just for us to learn, you know what, there's different types of murder. There's murder, yes, someone takes a gun and shoots, someone takes a knife and stabs. There's many different ways of murder. Maybe with my words I can murder someone. We see our sages tell us, you embarrass someone in public, right? It's like killing them. Maybe I'm not careful enough with the dignity, with the respect of another person. So these are all things that we can take and, you know what does it really mean? And start analyzing it. Maybe this is our first curveball that's being thrown our way. It's the first challenge that's coming our way. So I'm really excited for this journey. I look forward to studying together, learning these traits, understanding them, and then learning how to incorporate them into our lives, making ourselves better people, hopefully improving the way we are for ourselves, for our community, for the world, and of course with our relationship with the Almighty. Because at the end of the day, everything we learn is our reflection of the Almighty. It's understanding how the Almighty is perfect in His traits and we're not. We're trying to become perfect. We're trying to emulate God, which is why, again, that's why we're called Adam. Adam comes from the word Adamah, from earth. We have to teach her. We have to plow. We have to sow. We have to do all that's necessary for something to grow. But it's also from the word Adameh, which means to emulate, to be godlike, and that's what we're trying to. We are trying to, nurture positive traits within ourselves, and we're also trying to emulate God. So God should bless us all that this journey should be an enjoyable, fun, uplifting, and life-changing journey. And this is the conclusion of today's class and the conclusion of the introduction. And hopefully next week we're going to start focusing already on specific traits. Maybe we'll do a special class on Sukkot, on the holiday of Sukkot, understanding it. But either way, I look forward to seeing everyone Wednesday in my sukkah. If you need to know the information, it's on our website. This part you'll cut off already. Thank you. But on our website, torchweb.org, we have all of our information. It's the shake in the shack, right? We're going to have all these different shakes, and we're going to have everyone familiar here with nectar. So we're trying to secure them to cater the event. All their, the different, what do you call those, the juices or whatever they have, the smoothies and things like that. Either way, looking forward to seeing everyone. And next week we will have class. Next week is a very special week, just so you know. It's Hoshana Rabbah, which is the last day of Sukkot. Our sages tell us that Rosh Hashanah is the day of judgment. Yom Kippur is the day of atonement, which is the last day we can change what's on that judgment. But it doesn't get dropped in the mail, so to speak, till Hoshana Rabbah. And that's the day we can just say, you know what, we can change it. So today I'm going to be up the whole night learning and coming here to teach the class. It's a day of we're trying to change all judgment and change the whole decree. Any decree that's been written perhaps negatively in heaven can be changed, and we're looking forward to that day to be a very, very special day of inspiration. So I look forward to seeing everyone there.